For today's session, I'll give you a bit of a rundown around what mobility really is and some of the classic stuff I see with, I guess, today's society with chairs and computers and all the technology that is really great for us technologically wise, but in terms of our bodies, not the best thing sometimes. So I'll give you some key tips to work on, and then we'll get into some exercise. Now, if you do have a TheraBand, could you please grab it? If you don't have a TheraBand, that's okay. I'll be giving variations for those who don't. Perfect. Alrighty, so I've just muted everyone now. I'm going to jump over to my chair. You will need a little bit of space to do some standing work around you, but for the most part, everyone's looking like that should be okay. And we will be using our chair. Alrighty. Awesome. Yep. Yeah. Exercise tubing, anything that basically any resistance stuff is going to be great. So the resistance band is just going to allow you to essentially put more strain through your muscles in a good way. And then you'll get a bit more adaptation and a bit more of a workout out of it. But if you don't have one, you'll be doing the body weight variations, which is still going to be beneficial. Cool. So I'll move back a little bit. Hopefully you can still see me fully in the screen. Yep. So I guess just to start off with, just to touch on kind of the difference between mobility and flexibility. A big one with mobility, it's essentially what range you can put your joints through, but also doing that actively. So an example of that is we're looking at the flexibility of my hip, for example. If I physically grab my knee and pull my knee up as high as I can, that's how much range I have through my hip joint. In terms of mobility or strength in that manner as well, it's how high can I get my knee actively. So now my muscles are doing all the work. So you'll see it's not as high as when I pulled it up myself. So with that, doing stuff like passive stretching. So passive stretching means when we're just physically trying to get more length and just pulling on our muscles and not really activating our muscles while doing that. It's a bit patchy with the evidence as of late, but essentially passive stretching may be good for a little bit of relief, but it doesn't tend to really cross over with building strength through those positions. So in today's session, I will show you some exercises that will help to lengthen out muscles that tend to get a bit tightened or a bit cramped up. And we're also going to aim to activate our muscles while we're in those positions to try to train our nervous system how to own those positions and get used to being in those positions so that over time, you should hopefully find you're getting less restrictions and a bit more strength in certain positions that your body's not really used to being in. And in doing so, you'll start getting more efficient movement and more variety in movement that you can do. Yeah, with better control and hopefully, if you are experiencing pain, less pain. All right. So a big one in today's society is essentially chairs. We start sitting in chairs from basically preschool, year one, go through all our schooling system. If you then decide to go to uni or you've done a trade, you can generally be at a desk or at a chair a lot of that time, or you might go the other end where you're doing a lot of manual labor, which can definitely be good for the body. But sometimes as well with manual labor, you may be doing the same repetitive movements day in, day out and overworking some parts of the body. So this whole class today is about building strength through foundational movements that we tend to do on a daily basis, but also trying to get across that message of just having variety in our movement and exploring what our bodies can do. And if we restore some mobility and we gain some good baseline strength, then that gives us the building blocks to start experimenting a bit more and build some confidence with movement in general and start engaging in more activities on a daily basis. So back to the hips, when we're sitting, if I turn side on, generally we're going to be sitting with our knees at roughly 90 degrees and our hips at roughly 90 degrees. And with that, if you're in positions like this for extended periods of time, your muscles can actually physically shorten a little. And if we're doing 8 hours or 10 hours a day of this, and we're doing this most days per week for a couple of months, years, and so on, then you'll start to see these constrictions starting to come around in the hips and the knees. And that's where you'll find people are unable to potentially fully extend their knee because their hamstrings have become quite short, or with their hips are not able to get full extension or full extension through the hip because of this restriction here. Okay, so we will build on some movements shortly to just help loosen up through the hips, through the knees, and then try to build on a bit of strength around that. The other one that I tend to see a lot of, very present in today's society, again, with computers, with mobile phones, and just the fact that everything we do, we tend to do in front of us, is getting a little bit of that kyphotic posture, so a rounded spine. All right, so another area that we want to sort of help to build up or lengthen out through is try to sometimes stretch through the front end of our body and just strengthen a little bit through the back end, okay? So keep in mind, everyone's going to be different based off your anatomy and the types of movements you do. But this is just a little bit of a general recommendation that you can see across the board, and helping to build on some of these foundations of opening up the hips, strengthening a little bit of the core, and generally we want to strengthen up through our back. That is a lot of the time some good starting points for most people, okay? So first off, we're going to have a crack at a bit of a different one. It's for our spine. I'm going to turn side on, and you can do it just sitting on your chair. You can also do this standing if you feel comfortable with it. And if you attended Tuesday's session, it's a little bit like the breathing technique we did at the start. We're essentially just going to think about if we can move our pelvis. So I want you to imagine that if you grab the outside of your hips, imagine your hips are like a bucket. So the top of your hips is like a rim of a bucket, and that bucket is full of water to the very top. And what we're thinking about doing is tilting our hips forward so that we're spilling water out in front and creating a bit of an arch in our lower back. And then tucking our tailbone under, tilting our hips the other way so that now the water would be spilling out the back of the bucket. And you're just seeing if you can connect to these muscles and get a little bit of what's called an anterior pelvic tilt or a forwards tilt, and a posterior pelvic tilt where we're tucking our tailbone under. So I'm doing it in a seated version. If you would like to, you can also try doing it standing, doing those little tucks forwards and backwards. You're not trying to force anything here. So you're just working on, can I firstly connect to these muscles and just move my hips, and then build on a little bit of mobility through the lower back. And you may find if you sit a lot and you tend to always sit stooped back, it may contribute to some back pain or stiffness or discomfort. So doing this movement can just help to get those areas of your body moving again, reconnect to those muscles, and generally can help a little bit with discomfort or pain. Good. The second one we're going to do now, so with that bucket, I'd like you to try to tilt it somewhere where the water isn't really spilling out too much. So that's what we will generally call neutral pelvis, where we're not too overly tilted forwards, and we're not overly tucked under, we're somewhere roughly in the middle, and our hips are just sitting level. So we're going to aim to hold that position a bit now, and see if we can do a similar thing with the upper body. Seeing if we can just slightly flex our spine forwards and then extend our spine up. So I'm making a nice big curvature. And then I'm drawing my shoulder blades down a little bit and just straightening up through my mid back. So again, this can be done standing. If you've ever done any forms of yoga or Pilates, they'll often be called kind of like a cat-cow stretch or cat-camel stretch. And we're essentially just taking the spine through this plane of motion, taking it through some flexion and extension, which is what the spine is designed to be able to do. Now we're going to just incorporate the whole spine. So now we're going to think about arching everywhere from the lower back to the mid back, really creating this nice backwards arch. And then we're going to tuck our tailbone under, curve the other way, and we're going into what's called a C spine. So I'm trying to make roughly a C shape from the back of my head to my tailbone. Lifting up, drawing shoulders back, creating that little bit of an arch, and then curving down. Now, if we wanted to incorporate breathing with this, then generally as we're opening up our thoracic abdominal region, we want to be inhaling. So we're breathing in. And then as we're closing down on this abdominal region in our sort of lungs, we want to think about breathing that air out. So exhale. So let's go for 2 more reps of this. And breathing out. And just for at home, if you're going to try this and you want to try it standing, it will look a little something like this, whereby we're breathing in, opening up. You can reach your hands up nice and high if it feels comfortable, and then breathing out and making a bit of curvature through our spine. Okay, so a lot of these exercises you've learned today, hopefully you'll be able to just add on a little bit into your daily routine, whereby you might be reading or working at a computer and you haven't moved for a while. Then you can just work on doing some little pelvic tilts, let your spine get into a bit of a different position and not just always staying fixed at that, yeah, sort of 90 degrees at the hips, and generally it can be a bit hunched over. Okay, awesome. The next one we're going to look at doing is ones to open up through the hip flexors. So for this, I'll show you a few different variations. You're going to go off what works best for you. And if you're not really comfortable trying this standing, then you can just observe it for today. The first one you can do, which requires no kneeling, is, and generally you'll use something for support depending on your balance, is to take quite a large step forwards. So in this circumstance, I'm going to be stretching out my back hip flexor and my hips. And from here, I'm going to think about trying to tuck that tailbone under that we just practiced, squeeze my bottom, and then just lean back a little bit. And all we're doing is basically getting our hip to move away from 90 degrees. Engaging a bit of your bottom and your tummy will help keep your lower back supported and making sure it doesn't overarch. And you can hold on to something and you can get a bit of stretch and mobilization through here. So the key components is having this quite a wide stance, squeezing on your bum, and drawing your tummy in a little bit. And for most of these stretches, we want to hold them for roughly 30 to 40 seconds. Or what I like to do is do about 5 to 6 contractions where you're tensing these muscles on, finding where the tension is, trying to lengthen it out a little bit. And you hold it on for about 5 seconds, then relax, and then go again. Now I'll show you 2 other variations. While I'm doing that, if you're able to watch and stretch, I'd be happy for you to try the other side, provided you feel okay watching me at the same time. So while I'm talking, potentially switch over and just try the other leg. And another great way you can stretch these is using a chair, or even better, I find, is if you have a 2 or 3 seater sofa or a couch. I tend to use that a lot of the time, because if I'm watching TV, sitting in this position, it's a great way to break up that sitting time and also help restore a bit more function through our hips. So if we were imagining this is the couch, this is the back end of the couch. So me, you are the TV. I like to come side on, I'll grab the top of the couch for support. I pop my knee on where I'd be sitting. I bring the other leg forwards, and then I do the same thing. Tuck under, squeeze my bum, and find that nice length through my hip. I'll just show you from my right side so you can see it a bit clearer. So imagine this is the couch, the back. I'd be stepping through the back at the moment, but knee onto the couch, tuck your tailbone under, and then just lengthen out a little bit through those hip flexors and quads. Okay, so that's another way you can try The last way I'll just touch on briefly, for those of you who find it comfortable getting up and down off the ground, the final way you can try it, and if you are comfortable getting up and down off the ground, this way or the couch is what I would suggest the most, is coming into a bit of a split kneel, tucking your tailbone under, and then again, lengthening out. So we're essentially getting our hips into 180 degrees as opposed to that 90 degrees they tend to sit in. Cool. All right, so far we've done a little bit of mobility through the pelvis, through the mid-back, through the whole spine. So we've loosened the spine up, we're learning to reconnect to it a little bit. Now we're aiming to just restore a bit of extension through the hips by getting them into that 180 degree position or close to. And the next one we'll look at is just a little bit for our hamstrings. Okay, so this one can be done sitting or standing. You've probably seen it before. If we're doing it standing, you may want to use something again for a little bit of support. All we're going to do is pop one leg out in front, keep the knee straight, and then we're going to sit our bottom back. So this does double up as a good balance exercise, and you may find you're getting a little bit of stretch through the hamstring. We're trying to drive our heels softly into the ground, so we're contracting some of our hamstring muscles, holding for about 5 seconds, and then coming back up. If you find it challenges your balance a little bit, then just take a seat, and you can do the same thing. Pop a foot out in front, lean forwards, think about driving that heel down slightly, so you're getting some contraction through this muscle. Hold for about that 5 seconds, come back up. So we're just going to work on this side for now. You choose to do it either standing or sitting. Going to do 3 more repetitions. Leaning forwards, pushing that heel into the ground. And you might find that progressively you can get that little bit further. All right, so let's go for 2 more reps. And 1 more repetition. And coming back up. We'll switch over to the other side now. So left leg, or for me, left leg out in front. You're pushing your heel down, getting a bit of contraction through those muscles, leaning forwards. And straightening back up. So roughly 3 to 5 seconds. Another way you can count it is when you get to this point, nice inhale, hold it for a little bit, big exhale, sink down a little bit further, or coming back up. So if you can concentrate on just trying to keep your breathing relatively consistent, generally aiming to do a bit bigger exhale than inhale, it's a great way to just keep the body relaxed and making sure you're not bracing or over tensing the body. So we'll just go for 2 more reps. And generally when you're doing stretching or any form of mobility and you're finding that point of tension, doing a extended exhale can help stimulate that bit more of that rest and digest system. Can tell your body it's okay to be in this position, and you might find you can actually relax a bit easier and start to gain a bit more range and a bit more mobility. Coming back up. Awesome. All right. Last one we're going to do is just some little tiny side bends. Just going to loosen up through the side of our body. You can do these standing or sitting. And then we're going to get stuck in to some of our strength work. All right, so just find a position that's comfortable. If your body feels like it wants to do any other form of stretching, you can do that while listening to me. So today, we're going to build on 4 main exercises. We'll see how we're going for time after that, if we want to add in anything else. With strength and conditioning training, or resistance training, I guess you can classify it as for what we're doing today. Ideally, you want to get in 2 sessions a week if possible to get better adaptation. All right, so recommendations roughly 2 to 3 sessions a week. If you're first starting off, 2 is going to be plenty. And for most exercises, we want to do somewhere between 2 to 4 sets of about 10 repetitions. Okay? So if that doesn't make sense, it'll make a little bit more sense once we start. But for today, we're going to pick 4 exercises. We're going to do 10 repetitions of each exercise, and we're going to do all of that 3 times each. 3 times each. Alrighty. I'll be giving, for each exercise, for the first set of it, I'll give a few different variations of it. So you can choose what's going to work best for you. And then for the second and third, you just go off what repetition's working well for yourself. Okay? Awesome. So the first 2 we're going to do, one is going to be a squatting action and one's going to be a pressing action. Okay, so these are very functional movements. A squat is kind of like sitting and standing from a chair, and some of you may just be doing that today, which is fine. But we squat down all the time. When you have to go to the bathroom, when you're getting out of a chair, if you're into gardening and you're getting down to do things on the ground, the squat's a very functional and normal movement and position for humans to be in. And I guess from chairs, we do tend to lose our ability to squat as well. So we tend to lose some mobility through the hips and ankles and can find it harder to get closer down to the ground. The press is another one whereby if you're ever opening doors or ever having to push yourself up off the ground, it's another just functional movement that also uses a lot of the bigger muscle groups of the upper limb. Okay, so most of the movements we're using today will utilize a lot of the muscle groups of either the lower body or upper body. And in that doing so, we can target a few at a time and get the most out of each exercise. So for the squat, we're going to aim to do either a sit to stand or a sit to touch, or if you're feeling okay, you can just do a full body weight squat. If you wanted to progress this at home, you can use little weights if you wanted to make it a little bit harder. Okay, I'm going to go for 10 repetitions. So those of you who are doing a sit to stand, you're just standing all the way up, sitting all the way back down. If you find your chair's a bit hard, you can put some thick books or large books on top of your chair or some cushions to make it a little bit higher. You can find a height that actually feels comfortable for you and safe for you. And then over time, reduce the height. So now you're starting to build strength at slightly deeper ranges. And you're doing that progressively, not just throwing yourself in the deep end. All right, so we're going to go for 10 repetitions, and then we'll move into the press. So if you're doing the sit to touch, you're aiming to stand up, go down and just tap before you come back up. And if you're doing the full just body weight, you can think about coming down and driving back up, not using a reference point. All righty. So for myself, I'm just going to do body weight squats. If you're wanting to do the touch or use the chair completely, you go for that. Okay. So I aim to stick with my tempo. We're going to go for 10 reps together. All right, off we go. So we're going to go down and come back up. Down and up. Now, while you're doing this, I want you to try to keep your knees, the kneecaps, in line with the middle of your foot. So we're keeping a bit more alignment through our hips. See if you can control your breathing with this as well. So as you go down, breathe in. As you come up, breathe out. Good. Let's go for 2 more. And last one. Good work. I'll be honest with you, my counting isn't always on point, so we might do 1 extra or 1 less sometimes, but we'll see how we go. The next exercise is the press. So I'll give you 3 variations. One is that if you have a band, you can place the band around your back, roughly where your shoulder blades are, and use it to push out and control back in. The second variation is if you have a wall. I can show you from here, but you won't really see what's happening. But if you imagine this is my wall, I can have my hands on the wall, control my body in, push back out. So doing a wall press. A third is that if you have a chair or a bench, so this chair is quite low, but I'll demonstrate with it. A bench is another great one. That's somewhere in between the wall and lower down. You can have your hands on the bench or chair and bring your chest down and push back up. So now I'm having to take a lot more of my body weight. It's getting more difficult. So I would recommend either using the band or using the wall. And with the wall, the benefit of that is you can slowly get a bit further away from it. And in doing so, you'll have to push more of your body weight. So pick either one of those. If you want to, you can try the band for your first one, try the wall for the second one, see how you find it. But we're going to go for 10 repetitions. I'll just use the band for today so I can see how everyone's going. And I think most of you are probably using the band as well. All right, so we're going to keep our shoulders down so that we're not shrugging up near our ears. Do your best to keep them down a little bit the whole time. And off we go for 10 reps. We're going to push out and control back in. Good, out. And you need to work against this band. It's going to want to fling your arms back in. You need to use your muscles to control it. Good. Think about pushing at shoulder height or just below shoulder height. When you go for another 3 reps, keeping shoulders slightly down, driving all the way out. If it feels easy, you can grab a bit closer to yourself. If it's feeling hard, grab a bit further away. Depends on what band you're using. Go one more for good luck. And coming back in, good job. Having a little rest. Perfect. So they're the first 2 exercises. All right, so grab a quick drink if you'd like one. And then what we're going to do is work through our squats and then go straight into our presses. We'll have a small rest, then we'll do it all again. And then I'll introduce you to 2 more exercises. So we'll just give it another 20 to 30 seconds and then we'll get stuck in for our next round. Just going to grab a little drink myself. Now, I will show you actually with the squat, if you can be bothered to muck around the band and you are practicing squats at home, a great way to use the band. When I was cueing keeping your knees out, that will help engage more of the outer glute muscles as well. So what we can do as well is bring your feet hip width apart, and this is optional, so you don't have to do this if you don't want to. And then feet stay hip width apart, knees come together. And we just tie a relatively medium knot so that now when I bring my knees back to hip width apart and align with the middle of my foot, there's some tension against the band. And knocked knees is something I see quite often at my workplace. Most of the time, I believe it's just because we get weak through our hips. And it's the hip muscles that help to keep those knees slightly turned out. And if your knees are knocking in all the time, have a feel for what happens to your feet. It's likely that they also collapse in and start to get flat. So if you've got flattened feet or knocked knees, generally you can do something about it. And this is a great way to teach your brain and these muscles to stay active as you're standing and sitting, which will produce better alignment, but generally allow you to actually produce more strength and force through your hips. Alrighty, so if you're trying this one, you might have to slightly regress how the difficulty you're working at. So you might need to go to a sit to stand or a sit to touch. We're going to go for 10 more reps. And what we might do, if most of you have tried this, we'll just do 2 sets of the squatting and then we'll do 2 sets of the pressing instead of jumping between the 2. Alrighty, so off we go for 10 reps. We're going to lean forwards, push through our heels, control back down. Now you can use your hands if you like to counterbalance. As you're standing up, I like to drive them back. As you sit down, to help you get your bottom back, bringing your hands out in front can be a great way to counterbalance. So get a feel for what's happening with your feet and knees. You want to keep pressure through the heel, the outside of our foot and underneath the big toe. Keeping those knees aligned, driving up, controlling down. Let's go for our last two, then we'll have a little rest. And resting there. Good work. What I also like to teach clients or individuals I'm working with is when you're resting, try to make the most of that rest period. So if possible, breathe in through your nose. And I like to think 30 seconds is a good amount of time to rest. If you're doing good breaths, 3 to 5 breaths is going to be enough to actually elicit that nice recovery, but also go for roughly 30-second duration. Okay, so for the remaining of today's session, when you are resting, I'd like you to think about taking a good 3 to 5 second inhale, 3 to 5 second exhale, and doing about 3 to 5 of those. All right, let's get set up again. We'll go for one more round and then we'll untie these bands and get into some pressing. So everyone ready? And 3, 2, 1, standing up, sitting down. So generally when you're building on strength, increasing the weight is the way to do it. If we want to build on our cardio, we can do this a bit faster, get that heart rate working a little bit harder. I was doing really well. Try to keep your chest up a little bit as you sit down. So make sure, or do your best to still see in front of you and not completely lean forwards with that chest. Go for 2 more. Last one. Nice work. Have a seat, everyone. If you have your band tied around your legs, you can untie it now. Might be the hardest bit of the exercise. Cool. Let's stand back up. Straight into the pressing. So behind the shoulders. Find a good distance so that you're getting decent resistance. Draw those shoulder blades down a little bit. And off we go. Pushing out. Controlling back. As you push out, see if you can get your hands to reach as far away from you and tap together in the middle. Beautiful work. Take a nice breath in as you bring it back. Breathe out as you press. Just be mindful of your lower back as well. So I want you to do your best, if you think back to that bucket analogy, make sure you're not spilling all your water forwards and arching your lower back excessively. And keep it around that neutral. Let's go for our last press. Good work. Have a little breather. 4, 5, nice breaths. Let the body recover, and then we'll go for one more set. And thank you to everyone who's got their cameras on today. No problem if you don't want to have it on, but a bit funner on my behalf too. I can see how everyone's responding. Feels a bit more like a group exercise class as well. And everyone seems to be doing really well at home. So let's go for our last set. Shoulders down, a little bit of that tummy drawn in. And off we go, pushing out, controlling back in. So breathe in as you bring it back, open up your collarbones. Breathe out, push away, see if you can touch your hands together. Let's go for 4 more reps. Now remember, with all these exercises, 10 is just a recommendation. It's a good amount in terms of evidence base, in terms of, building muscular strength. Let's go for our last one. But if you find that you've done about 5 or 6, 7 reps and you're starting to get a good burn, your muscles are feeling it, let's have a rest there, then by all means rest early. Okay? If you're finding 10's a bit easy, you're welcome to do a few more. But if you're pumping out about 15 to 20 of an exercise without any real issues, that's probably a good indication that it's a little bit light and you'd want to up the intensity somehow to get a bit more adaptation through your body. All right, everyone. So our next 2 exercises we're going to do, one is a hinge, or in gym terms, generally called a deadlift. And then the other one is a row. So the squat and the press aim to work on a bit more of the muscles at the front of our body. Helps to work on some of the quads and our hips, and then through the chest. The next 2 are going to aim to work on some of the hamstring muscles, the back muscles. So we're working sort of the back line of our body. So with a hinge, very similar to a squat, only you're going to bend your knees a lot less. So if I show you the squat again, where I'm bending my knees, sitting my bum back and pushing back up, with the hinge, we're going to think about just softening our knees. Hands will be on our sides. I'm going to really stick that bottom back, 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 so that my torso or my trunk's getting almost horizontal. You'll generally feel some tension through the hamstrings, the back of your thighs. And if you keep a little bit of your tummy drawn up, your lower back should feel supported. From there, I drive through the ground, squeeze my bottom and straighten back up. Okay? So let's have a crack at doing 10 of those, and then I'll show you a progression for our second set. So hands by our side, draw your shoulder blades together a little bit, soften your knees, and then keep those shoulder blades together, reach that bum back, and then push into the ground and straighten back up. Off we go again for another 9 repetitions. So bottom back, straight back, drive up. That's 2. Let's keep that going. Up for 3. I'd like you to all imagine you've still got that band around your knees. So you're driving your knees out slightly against that band. Imaginary band in this case. But if you do so, you'll probably feel a bit more stable and potentially feel some of the outside of your glutes engage, your bottom. Do your best to grip the ground with your toes and keep good contact through the heels. And again, controlling our breathing as we do this. So this movement kind of mimics if we're picking up something heavy off the ground, sitting your bottom back. Generally, a combination of the hinge and the squat is a good movement to be lifting heavier objects because it helps to get the drive coming through the hips with the back staying stabilized. Let's just finish the one we're doing. Have a little breather. You could have a seat. And then we'll be needing our TheraBand for the next one to do what's called a row. Now, if you don't have a TheraBand, I'm going to show the variation for no TheraBand first, and then I'll show everyone what we're doing if we have one. So if we don't have a TheraBand, a way to still train the back muscles, and I'll show you front on and side on, is to slightly hinge forwards. Bring your hands together, and then you're opening your arms back and squeezing your shoulder blades together. so that you're engaging through your mid-back. Slight lean forwards, hands out in front, squeeze through the mid-back, bring your hands back together. If you have a band, this might be the trickiest bit of the exercise, is trying to hook it around either both feet if it feels comfortable or just one. The benefit of both feet is it will keep the anchor point in the middle, but if you feel like there's any stress on the back or it's a bit hard to balance, just go 1 foot out in front. Both are very effective. I'm going to hook the band around my feet. I'm going to think about that bucket. So how is our pelvis sitting? At the moment, I'm spilling a lot out the back. I'm just going to tilt my hips forwards, lift my chest. And then we're going to aim to pull back, draw our shoulder blades back. Let's go for 10 repetitions. If you don't have a band, you'll hopefully remember that first exercise I just showed before. You're doing the sort of a fly motion, squeezing through the back shoulder blades. This is feeling easy. You can crisscross the band. It'll add a little bit more tension. And it'll also make you work through your feet a tad as well, through your hips. So let's go for another 3 repetitions. Good, control back out in front. Having a little rest. Good work, everyone. While you're resting, I'm going to show you how we can make the hinge a little bit harder. So only do this if you're feeling safe and confident with your balance. So you can just rest and watch for now. But the hinge motion we just did, where we slid our bum back and drive back up, if we want to add some resistance to that now, we can use the band again. And the way you'll do that, I might show you side on, but essentially we're going to be standing over the band. Show you both ways. So we're going to stand over it if you're wanting to add resistance. You come down and grab either side of the band. And then same as before, keeping our back straight, knees a little bit soft and bottom back. And then we can drive up. So now you're doing that hinge motion. I'll do a little penguin walk to show you side on. Bottom back, drive up. Notice my arms aren't moving in terms of I'm not pulling with my shoulders or my arms. Everything's coming through the back of the legs and the hips. Okay, so if you're feeling okay with that, you can try that with the band. Otherwise, don't worry about the band. Same as before, bottom back, coming back up. Off we go for 10 repetitions. Some of you have already started, I can see. So if you're wanting to, you can do a few more. But otherwise, just once you've done about 10, have a little rest. So I'm a bit late for starting my reps. I'll just give you another 30 to 40 seconds and then we'll move back into the row. Good, so from what I'm seeing on the screen, everyone's doing a pretty good job. I would recommend trying to let your eyes follow the movement of your spine. So some of you are looking down at the ground the whole time and always staying in flexion, whereas others are looking up ahead and going into a bit too much extension. So if you just keep that neutral, let the eyes follow as the spine moves, then we're just staying neutral through our spine. The other cues is trying to keep that little bit of a pinch through our shoulder blades so that as we're going down, we're not overly rounding and actually lifting through the back. All right, I'd say just finish the one you're doing. Great job to those who started a minute early and kept going. And great job to everyone else, good technique. All right, so sitting back down, back into the row. For those of you who have a lighter band like myself, you may want to try doing single arm. So for single arm, you can actually double up the band. It's going to double the resistance now. we had 2 hands pulling that resistance. Now we can go in 1 hand if you feel like you need that extra resistance. And then the same as before, pulling back with 1 arm, squeezing that shoulder blade back and down and controlling back out. So what we might do for this set, if you're feeling up for it, you can try single arm, 10 on each side. If you're feeling, if you're doing double arm again, then just working on 10 to 15 in a row. But keep in mind that everyone's resistance bands are different. Depends on which one you bought. The different brands will go off, different colors will represent the intensity of them. I'm pretty positive that BM Multi have some on their website too. So if you don't have any, you can order them online, get them delivered to your house. But they're just a very versatile tool. And as you start developing an exercise regime, TheraBand's great, especially if you can't access your gym or if you're going away, but you still want to maintain a little bit of exercise. This can fit into your bag without much hassle. If you haven't already, I'd switch arms. If you're doing that double, just work within your capacity. Generally, 15 repetitions is going to be enough before you need a rest. And really try to initiate the movement through the shoulder blade. Get that squeeze behind the blade. Go for a last 2. Last one. Alrighty. We're pretty well at time, but I think what we might do is just pump out one last quicker set. So let's all jump up for one more round of the hinging, and then we'll do one more round of just double arm rows to finish off. Alrighty. So popping, if you're using the band, feet over the band, getting that back nice and straight, shoulder blades drawn down, tummy a little bit on, and then we're driving up, controlling bum back. Work, everyone. I'm going to go a little bit quicker than usual for this last one, so I'm at about 4 repetitions. 5, halfway. Go for our last 2. Make sure you're still driving those knees out. Last one. Work, stepping off. Finding your chair. Hooking feet around. And we'll just go double arms, but grab a bit further up if you need more tension. And off we go. Lift that chest, straighten that back. 10 repetitions. Five to go. Last 3. And last one. Nice job, everyone. Well done. So hopefully you enjoyed that. If you are someone who does enjoy or does engage in activities where you are sitting for extended durations, then having a TheraBand handy is a pretty great way to just be able to break up your sitting time. If you do remember some of these